Kia ora koutou katoa. Nei rā te mihi kia koutou I tēnei ahiahi, ki tēnei hui o tātou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. So this is the 589th Council meeting for Te Kaunihia Te Taoki Waitaha. And today we're going to hear submissions on the dangerous dams policy. So it's a hearings meeting today. We've definitely got a quorum present, so I'm happy to declare the meeting open. And we did our karakia this morning at the start of the day, so we will finish off with karakia at the end of the day, at the end of this meeting. Apologies. I know we've got Councillor Scott, who's not here at the moment. We've got Councillor Swiggs, who's down in Dunedin, and we've got Councillor Robinson and Councillor Tiche online. So conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest that anyone's got? No. Move on. So our first item that we've got is our hearing dams policy, and we've just got a few resolutions that we need to pass, but I'm going to ask Fiona to come to the table and Cam as well, and just introduce this to us, and then we'll go from there. So kia ora kōrua.
Kia ora koutou. So under the Building Act, we need to adopt a policy on dangerous earthquake-prone and flood-prone dams. At your meeting on the 28th of August, you adopted a proposed policy to go out for consultation. The consultation period was open for over 30 days. It's required under the Local Government Act, so from the 2nd of September through to the 4th of October. In that period, we received 10 written submissions, and we also received an additional 2 by email after the closing date. The recommendations are that you accept all 12 of those submissions. So we've got 6 people of the 12 wishing to be heard, and deliberations are scheduled for the 6th of November. So staff will, after the hearings today, take what we've heard, do the analysis and provide you with some advice next week around how we to amend the amend the policy.
Any questions from councillors on that? No? All good. Hey, thank you, Fiona and Cam. And just acknowledging that we've got a few of our submitters in the room. Nei rā te mihi kia kōrua. Ka wanginui a mātou I tēnei ahiahi, so kia ora, thank you for being here. And I know we've got 6 all up, but I think we've had an apology from 1, so I think we'll be having 5 submitters today. So we've just got these resolutions to start off with in terms of kicking the process off. So there's just 4 resolutions here, noting that we've required to have a policy under the Building Act, as just had explained to us. That we've adopted a proposed policy for consultation, that was out for consultation. We've received 10 submissions and 2 additional written submissions, so 12 all up, as you heard, and we're going to be hearing 5 of them today now. So do I have a mover for these resolutions? Councillor Ward, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Cranwell. Any discussion required? No? All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried, thank you. So what we're going to do now is we'll move into our hearing the submissions. And we've got, just briefly overview that we've got 10 minutes for each speaker, as we normally do, and people will have a 9-minute or a ballot 9 minutes. Oliver's got it here. There you go, mate. And that will indicate we've got 1 minute left, and then we can have questions on that submission based on that. So our first submitter is Ian Densem. If Ian would like to come to the table. Kia ora, Ian. Thank you so much for giving up your time to be here. Appreciate your submission and looking forward to hearing from you. So you've heard 10 minutes roughly, and we'll give you a bit of an indication, and then we'll go to questions. So kia ora, over to you.
How to make this work? Or is it reworking? Push the button. Okay. I'm no public speaker, so you have to put up with me. Yeah, my name's Ian Densem. I'm an earth moving contractor. I own several farms with dams on them, and we employ engineers to try and get through, all the bullshit with trying to get consents. You've got 3 different regulatory outfits. We have government policy, we have regional policy with you fellas, and then we have district policy. And you try and mix all 3 together, get across the line, jump through all the hoops, and make it affordable. It's pretty hard to do. I have to say too, even the name of what you're trying to do here, dangerous dam policy, that's a bit like saying all men are rapists. I've got a dick, but I haven't raped anyone. So, and I've got several dams that have no danger to anyone. So you need to, sort of, seems to me like it's pretty lopsided one way, this event.
Excuse me, I wish to caution the speaker. Excuse me for intervening, but I think,
thank you, Genevieve. Thank you. It just would be nice if we don't use some language that could be offensive.
I don't think I spoke out. If you watch TV, you'll see this sort of stuff happen all the time.
We're in a council chamber, so it'd be nice.
If you go to Parliament, you'll hear a lot worse than what I've just said too.
Well, we're not in Parliament. We're in the Environment Canterbury chamber, so thank you.
Anyway, I went to several engineers and consultants about this, and neither of them could be really, have to say, they thought there was a waste of time probably coming in and probably talking about it, because, it's, virtually nonsensical. But they sort of said you basically need to be an engineer or a lawyer to understand this, and I take this policy sort of going out to be given to the public or the local farmers or whatever to make sense of. And it's a bit like all the other stuff that's thrown their way, that in a lot of cases it's, you're making it impossible for them to do their job. Even the way the document's sort of written too, you go there, you keep on referring to the Act 2004, and you have to, flip from one document to another to understand it. You should be able to write in such a way that, you can read the document, understand it, not having to refer back to other things all the time. But, in all their thoughts, that this just adds more confusion to the whole game of trying to build a dam. With having to go, through the rules of the governments, the regional councils and the local councils, because they overlap so much and cause confusion, it really does add a lot of more expense and cost to a project. I'd have to say too, within the industry, there's a lot of so-called experts who aren't up to speed. We've rebuilt several dams, which I would say are flawed, and we've rebuilt them to expand on them, to make them into a part of an irrigation project. We're doing one for Ashburn Linus now, and as we've deconstructed this dam, we've found faults in there. But they're not what I would call, they're not going to cause collapses or anything. But again, some of these so-called experts that people rely on to make these decisions or help to guide you people, they aren't up to speed. They, in a lot of cases, they should have actually not allowed these dams to be ticked off in the way that they have been built. So really, there's faults with the contractor for not doing his job right, and there's faults also with the way the engineers have been overlooking these dams too. But I can understand why there are concerns out there, but really within Canterbury, the way these are built, the height of what they're built, most of them, you're never going to have a problem. I'd have to say, can anyone actually tell me, has there been a life lost from a dam failure? You got more chance of getting run over on the way home than drowning in the dam. Or probably getting high blood pressure if you're trying to build one. And, from these silly regulations. But I'll yeah, that's basically me. But I'll draw one picture which sort of I reckon explains too part of the way that people. We used to be able to build dams, which are in this, have to say this new dam policy makes it so we're not allowed to build over 4 metres unless we're going to jump through a bunch of hoops and employ some people, which will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to get the dam consented. And so they've made a 4 metre rule now, which we're not allowed to build over that. We've got to go to 3.999 metres. But we actually, if you're building a dam and you're going to, say you're going to build a dam and sometimes we have excess material, we've got nowhere to put this excess material. And when we had the 3 metre water depth rule, we could actually build the dams safer. We had a place we'd build the dams embankments a lot more sturdy, but now because of the way of the 4 metre rule, we can't actually do that. And it's sort of due to this. All Canterbury's basically on a slope, and we've built it down like this. And so we try to always build them so they cut to fill. So the dirt we take out of X here goes into Y and Y. And sometimes if we have excess material over because the slope's a different way, we used to build the dam so we would make the embankments higher and maybe wider. And the water might still only be 3 metres because that's all we're allowed to build it to. But now we've got to build it to a 4 metre rule, so get rid of that. And the 4 metre rule goes from the measurement of here to here, and this is when it's expanded out to these 4 metres. So before we used to be able to build up the dam and make it wider to get rid of the waste material, and now we can't. So we actually, in a lot of cases, we actually make the dam less safe. But that's just sort of the real common sense that all these rules that you people put in place sort of make it so hard for us to do our job and to make them safer. And that's that's a government rule, and it's a regional council rule, and it's a people like Waimea District Council put those in place too. But a lot of you, I'd say most people here, yeah, a lot of people who make these things haven't got any. Probably haven't been to 1% at constructed or anything, wouldn't know anything about it. We build filters under their dams, which we particle test, particle size test everything we do. So we build a filter underneath, so they, they're virtually impervious to leaking water. But you really stymie good engineering and construction of dams with a lot of these rules you're making. You really need to rethink what you're doing, make it so it's workable. Yeah. Thank you.
Wait there, because we might have some questions, but I really respect your knowledge that you have. And, that picture does speak 1,000 words. So thank you for drawing that for us and helping us understand that 4 metre issue, because as you can see, it's from the lowest point, not on the inside where the water is. So, yeah, thank you so much for that. Are there any questions from councillors for Ian? No. One from me is so the 4 metre rule is handed down to us from government. That's what you said, yeah, which is pretty tough for us because we have to just enforce that, right? But have you raised that 4 metre rule thing with the government previously?
I've tried to, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
Okay.
No one's really interested, are they?
I'm quite interested, but yeah,
They aren't.
No.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Is there any other questions, councillors? Yeah, John?
Ian, you said that you've got national rules, regional rules, and district rules. How can we bring, or does this, my understanding was this was trying to bring everything together so that there was one rule for all. You're saying that's not happening.
It's not for all New Zealand.
Right.
I'll just push your button again, Ian. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, when we build in Mulberry, you whole different set of rules up there too. Go down to Otago, basically, or south of Otago, it's all different again too. And another one we looked at up in Marlborough, we helped build with tallies, and it was 60-metre drop off on a cliff into a river, and someone from Auckland had ticked the box, and we had a consent. And I looked at it and I thought, better not share what I thought. But anyway, it was just stupidity that it was built. So we said, no, we don't want to know about this. But in the end, a bit of common sense came along. A local engineer was then involved with it, and they moved it away. But, to put it even near a cliff face, there needs to be some real good changes made, not just changes for the hell of it. And you probably need to involve people who actually do this work. Does that make sense?
Councillor Mackay, you got a question?
Yes, I do. I think there's two different things here. This is a policy that we have to develop as part of the government regulations, but I take on board your concerns around the construction and the consenting requirements. And that I suspect there'll be another opportunity as we go forward and develop our integrated plan, and those sorts of thinking can come back onto the table then. Just sort of a query around this format. I agree with the chair, that's really visible around the slope of the land. I'm not quite sure what your normal width of the highest wall would be. Would it be 20 metres, 30 metres? So I'm just trying to work out in my head that the quantum of that difference between the internal bank height at ground level versus the toe that might be 20 or 30 metres out, given a slope. I mean, I know our property is 1 and 7, for example. Do you have a sort of sense of, is it half a metre or is it a metre? I mean, it'll vary.
On average, quite often, we'd actually like to build the banks actually to make them safer and even safer for our machines to operate on. Normally, we won't build a dam wall unless it's about 3 to 1. And that's practically what we can do with our motor scrapers, and that's the most efficient way of building them. But we sort of get forced in the corner where we've probably got to run them at 3 to 1 on the outside, and normally people are trying to push us to do 2.5 1 inside, which is really dangerous. If you're worried about actually life loss from the dam failure, is probably going to be more life lost if we have to build them at 2 to 1 inside. But they're pushing those boundaries because they the steepness of the bankments do want it. They're trying to push it in so we can get more water volume in there for the and minimise the cost of the dam. But really, if we didn't have that 4 metre rule in that respect, it would make one hang of a difference for safety of the dam and for safety of the operation of building them too. And if to say the flatter, the better on the inside, the less erosion from wave damage, which again is probably the biggest concern of a dam failure from erosion internally in them.
Thank you, Ian. Grant, was it you that had a question? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. My question is in terms of your current dams, what sort of process do you go for in terms of inspection for to confirm the integrity of the dams that you have built, and how regular is that process?
We only employ one engineer. When I first started building these, I've been contracting for probably 30 odd years, maybe 40. But we'd go to an engineer, and honestly, we couldn't get any direction on how to build these properly. And we went some fairly highfalutin outfits. And then one day I was lucky enough to meet an engineer, and he walked around the site for basically a day, talking about materials and rubbing them together. And better not tell my wife this, but it was probably the best day of my life meeting that man, to be honest. And so he didn't actually know how to build them either. But he left that business, and then he said, he rang me up and he said, can we do your work? And I said, hell yeah, please do. And so I employed him actually to go and work out how we build dams in Canterbury so that they don't leak and they're safe. And he went away for about 3 weeks and came back, and he said, the US Marines are already doing it in parts of America in alluvial gravels like they are in Canterbury. And he came up with a solution, how we particle size everything. So we dig holes, we take samples, we send them off Fulton Hogan. They come back and tell us if you've got a rock this size and all the gaps are in between this size, you need a rock slightly bigger. And then you get all the way down to the tiniest particles. So we particle size everything. We make sure we've got all the right particles in there, and then we make a filter underneath. So first of all, we don't strip the site completely, first of all, because it's too expensive. We work our way across it systematically. But we will strip the embankment area, and we make it so we go down to good hard material, or else we sometimes might reconstruct the material to make it so it's good foundation. And then then that way there too, it's also dug into the ground. It cannot slip or move sideways. And then we build the embankments out of the normally alluvial gravel. If we haven't got enough alluvial gravel there to do it, we sometimes will make a thicker liner on the inside of the dam. And then we have the alluvial gravels on the outside. You need to have it so the alluvial gravels, if they do get moisture in them, that they can drain. And that way there it keeps a stable embankment. And then once we've finished that part, we actually we build a filter, and that's basically out of gravels. And the filter, how do you put it? It catches all the smallest of silts, and they get caught in there like in a net, and they can't go through. So therefore, the water can't go past those there. And just about we did tests. We sponsored Canterbury University to do some research on this, and just about the more depth of water we have, the particles get pushed together harder, and just about makes it even more impervious. So there is science behind this, to be honest, and and then we put the soil layer over the top. But a lot of people do think it's the soil that seals them, but it's actually the filter, the gravel filter underneath, which seals these dams. Then with the silt on top, and then the soil. Soil really is only silts with a bit of organic matter, in which will break down inside the dam too. So if you look in the end 20 years' time, it won't be soil anymore, just be organic matter. Yeah, it'll be silt again.
Thank you, Ian. What a great explanation of the process, which really makes us understand.
Yeah. But it's there's
how
not
much
many people that do that.
How much depth you go into to make sure it's right and safe. So thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's all the questions. So thank you, Ian. Thanks for your time. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you. Thanks for listening to me. Good luck.
Is Chris Gallagher here? No, I think that's right. So the next one on our list is Ian Shields. Kia ora, Ian. Welcome to the table. Again, thanks for giving up your time and your knowledge to be here. So we've got 10 minutes roughly for you, and at 9 minutes you'll get a little bow if you've spoken that long. If not, all good, and then we'll ask some questions. So thank you. Over to you.
Okay, so I became interested in dams quite by chance. I used to live near the village of West Ayrton, and there was a proposal to build a significant dam, a large dam, up the hill from where we lived. And the dam is 1 kilometre by 1 kilometre, and it's 13 metres high. There's 8.2 million cubes of water intended to go in this dam. And should it break, should there be a breach, there are houses looking at a 2-metre wall of water going through their houses. So that's why I became interested. I've got a background in IT and ops research. I did some modelling to see how many households were potentially impacted. And there's in the order of about 625 properties in the area. And from there, I decided that I needed to do something about that. I'm now chair of ESES, which is the Eyrewell Community Environmental Safety Society, and I wanted to take a slightly different slant on some of the issues which are coming up here. I'd like to read from part of my proposal, but my main concern is around insurance. And this is something which isn't included in the policy as it currently stands, but it needs to be. And I'll explain why. Given the well-documented seismic activity in Canterbury, it's imperative that we thoroughly assess land defamation and its implications for infrastructure, particularly in relation to dam safety. The potential risks these structures pose to downstream communities necessitate that Environmental Canterbury, ECAN, adopt comprehensive policies to address both dam safety and the associated legal responsibilities of operators. Seismic risks and infrastructure safety. Canterbury's unique geological conditions increase the risk of land defamation during earthquakes. Above-ground shingle storage ponds are particularly vulnerable, as they rely heavily on the liners to prevent water loss. A failure of this liner during seismic events could result in a catastrophic flooding for downstream areas. Emergency preparedness. In the event of an earthquake, the rapid evacuation of stored water from these dams can be critical in mitigating potential disasters. Therefore, it is essential to establish clear protocols for the emergency emptying of these structures. Detailed plans must be developed and effectively communicated to local communities, ensuring that residents are informed about evacuation routes and procedures. Legal liability and risk management. The legal precedent set by Rylands versus Fletcher in 1868, which was in the House of Lords in London, highlights that operators of such dams could be held strictly liable for any harm caused by their failure, regardless of negligence. So what the ruling states is, if you bring a nuisance water onto your land which isn't naturally there and it escapes, you are liable for all the damage, the cost, the expense, the mitigation of everything. That includes things not only like houses, chattels, motor vehicles, stock, fencing, planting, damage to roads, damage to bridges, but it also includes things like loss of earnings. It also includes temporary accommodation. It also includes the relocation of people whilst their houses are rebuilt. And it also includes the restoration of land, which is prohibitively expensive. This case law reinforces the necessity for comprehensive risk insurance and robust safety measures. ECAN's regulatory framework must account for these liability implications, ensuring that those responsible for managing these structures and operating these structures are adequately insured and prepared for potential failures. So what I'm calling for here is you need to include in your policy the fact that owners and operators of these dams either need a large asset base or they need insurance to cover all potential losses. Because you can guarantee that if you don't do that, the public, the residents, the ratepayers will come to the council and they will expect the council to make up any shortfall. Building community trust. Public trust in ECAN is crucial, especially in light of the recent reports that raise significant concerns about its regulatory effectiveness. A former employee's testimony has indicated a catastrophic failure in oversight, further eroding community confidence. Now, the nitrate issue is one which immediately springs to mind, and we can also look at the former chair as well. To rebuild this trust, ECAN must enhance its transparency and responsiveness, demonstrating a genuine commitment to safety and the well-being of Canterbury residents. Conclusion. In the light of the risks associated with seismic activity, it's vital that ECAN's policies address several key issues. These include, but are not limited to, dam location suitability. Don't put a dam at the top of a hill when people live downstream of that dam. That's a stupid thing to do. Dam safety. Make sure you can empty the dam. The proposals for the Brights Road ponds didn't have a means to empty the dam other than through the existing races. That will take too long. Emergency preparedness. Make sure you've got a working emergency plan so people have a chance of getting out. Think about communications. Think about the physical constraints that you have. Where we're sandwiched between the Waimakariri and the air. Therefore, if those rivers are in flood, There's no way out. We're trapped. We're stuck. Legal liability. Again, the insurance aspect is really important here. And community confidence. A proactive approach will not only safeguard Canterbury's infrastructure, roads, bridges, telecoms, all of those good things, but also protect the lives and livelihoods of those living downstream. Thank you for considering these critical issues.
Kia ora, Ian. Thank you. Are there any questions from councillors? Councillor Davies?
Thank you. Is there any case law from New Zealand which references the House of Lords decision?
The actual case law itself applies to New Zealand. It's not just a UK thing. It's applied in New Zealand. And when Judge Newhook made his ruling on our particular case, he referred to the case, and he therefore stipulated all the things which should be insured given the piece of legislation. Given the piece of case law. If you ask any insurance specialist, they will be able to confirm that.
Thanks, Ian. Good question, Joe. Any other questions? Yeah, Councillor McKenzie?
Yeah, I think the legislation provides for classifying dams according to whether highly dangerous or lesser dangerous. Are you only referring in your submission to the most dangerous dams?
No, I'm not. The actual case law applies to any nuisance which you bring onto your land. So that could be a medium pick dam or even a small pick dam.
So you want to apply your rules to even dams which are classified as having low risk attached to it, eh?
If there's risk downstream, then it's up to the operator or owner of that structure to make sure they have suitable cover. If there's not enough water in that pond or storage area to cause harm downstream, then you obviously don't need insurance. It's according to the risk. It's the risk that's important.
Kia ora, Ian. I think that's point well made. Don't think there's any other questions. Thank you so much for your knowledge and bringing this issue to us. So thank you. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you very much.
I think at 4:20 we were having Lionel, Federated Farmers. Is Lionel? We're a bit early. We're a couple of minutes early, and then after that we had Brian. We'll see if Lionel's here, but if he's not, happy to. If you would do it early, Brian, are you happy to get on with it? Cool. Well, let's just go with you, eh? And Lionel can jump in next if he's available. So, kia ora, Brian. I think you've heard the drill. 10 minutes, and we'll ring a bell at 9 if you're still going, and we'll have some questions. So, kia ora, over to you.
Kia ora, good afternoon. My name's Brian Gallagher, and my role is the Sustainability Manager with Dairy Holdings. Dairy Holdings is a corporate group with 83 farms in the South Island. We stretch across 5 regional councils and 11 district councils. And I must concur with the comments that Ian made before, that there's certainly some inconsistencies with how things are dealt with between the different regional councils and local authorities. One example is Selwyn District Plan that they were proposing was requiring resource consent for any earthworks to be done within 20 metres of the riverbank or an outstanding natural landscape. That would have meant we needed resource consent to clear silt from our irrigation races that were adjacent, and whereas on the south side it's a permitted activity in the Ashburton district. So just one example. But a little bit about my background. I have qualifications in civil engineering and environmental management. I spent a number of years with the former Ministry of Works, and in particular in the Upper Waitaki. So development of the dams, monitoring of the dams, precise monitoring, irrigation development in Mihi, through Canterbury and on the west coast. A number of works involved also hydrology works, so looking at what flows were going down rivers, and in particular the north branch of the Ashburton River, that's certainly flowing higher than surrounding farmland. I was seconded to the East Coast Catchment Board before regional councils to do flood hazard mapping for the whole of the East Coast after Cyclone Bowler. And more recently here in Christchurch, I was project manager for Fulton Hogan in constructing the stop banks up 11 k's up both sides of the Avon River after all that land subsided, 1.5 metres. So I know grey hairs come with age, but there was a few nights there where 3 o'clock in the morning we were out sandbagging with residents still living right beside the river. So very, very aware of the risk, and also spent time with the Timaru District Council developing a waste management strategy for Canterbury. That was part of the Cape Valley development, and in part of that role with the District Council was also in civil defence. So I've seen a fair share of what Mother Nature can throw at us in Canterbury and the West Coast, and certainly have a very good understanding of the risks. With dairy holdings, we have, I call them irrigation ponds, but as per Ian's example there, they are dammed water, so it starts off basically at ground level at zero. We were looking at getting 14 of these certified in the initial round of regulations. The estimates were $14,000 to $20,000. So we only have one now that exceeds 4 metres. And what's frustrating is that the guidelines and the self-guidance that's provided, I was able to conduct the risk assessment, but it cost $14,000 for that to be certified. With a number of our irrigation ponds, these are consented, so we also have reporting to Environment Canterbury already. So one of the concerns I see with this is a duplication of reporting, and especially costs, where we're having to pay 2 engineers to come up with the same result. What I'm a little bit unsure about in the regulations is what referable dams are, so it's still not clarified. It's a worry that this potentially can expand. So as the previous speaker submitted, talked about risk, certainly it's in the minds of everybody that we need to identify any risks and mitigate those, because the life and well-being of people are most important. But the major risk for us with our on-farm storage is not ponds or the dams themselves, but the rivers. And you'll go back to the 2019 Rangitata floods and the 2021 Mid-Camry floods, where we had life at danger and people airlifted. The real risk was from the rivers, not the irrigation ponds on farm, because that's the water broke banks and inundated the land. So the volume of water, when looking at a risk assessment from the on-farm dams or ponds, is low. So we just need to be mindful that we don't need to be overcomplicating things and trying to mitigate every risk. It's a bit like going out with a checklist for every household. Have you got a fire alarm? Have you got your building consent in order? So it's definitely looking at that risk assessment. So where did the 4 metres come from? Is that a number that someone's just plucked out of the air in Wellington? I don't know. But I think risk assessment and by all means, the health and safety of people and the general public is at the forefront. But let's just keep in mind that we need to be practical about it.
Cool. Hey, thanks for that, Brian. Questions from councillors? Councillor Mackay, and then I'll go to Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, thanks very much. I don't have a dam that's big enough. Our irrigation pond's quite small, not much bigger than this. But just can you explain to me, and I'm sure other councillors at the table have got the answers, around this idea of duplication of consented dams. Now, so this policy does just apply to high and medium risk dams, as I understand it, but we know that obviously there are consented dams with some conditions around them. Can you just explain what those sorts of conditions on consented dams look like? How often are you having to monitor or provide feedback as part of your consent?
Gone off. Every 3 years, as an example. But under the regulations, we will have to do that every year. Different people. We as part of our own health and safety, we have developed our own on-farm in-house app for inspections. So we keep a record and do that every 3 months.
Well, no, only to say that is something that we could also look at some stage in the future too.
I
The
agree.
rules are the rules, and the consents are the consents.
Main concern I had was the referable. That's not clarified. And does that go back to the potential of every dam? That's one of the main concerns.
And I'm not sure the scope of what we can do about defining that, but something to look at for sure. Councillor McKenzie?
Yeah, and that was really my question. You refer to referable dams. Other submitters refer to the classification of the high danger, medium danger, and low danger. I mean, they're the same issues, aren't they?
I don't know.
So there's uncertainty about what we're talking about.
Yes, referable. It hasn't been defined yet. So the regulations are clear around high, medium, and low, and understand that. But it's the terminology of referable, what that definition is. Does that just make it go over that bigger?
So have you got suggestions as to what that should be?
I don't know. That's come from Wellington, but I think it's you probably just look based on the risk assessment that the high risk ones, large volumes, the potential life threatening ones are the ones that just need to be focused on.
And the one dam that Derry Hod. Sorry, no, hang on. Let me finish talking before you push a button. So the one dam you've got that breaches the 4 metre, well, puts that dam into this legislation. Has that got a level of danger rating on it?
It's been rated as low, yeah. And that's the point I made before. I was able to determine that through the matrix, but then we had to get someone $14,000 to give the same answer. So once it's defined as low, we don't need to go back and do annual checks and assessments that cost a significant amount.
Thank you, Brian. Is there any other questions from councillors? In terms of you heard the last presenter talk about the insurance thing. Can you give us any thoughts on that? Like, do you think that's an important thing?
Again, it comes to site specifics and location. The
if it
dams,
was a high risk,
dams and ponds that we have, they'll just spread out across the farm paddocks. There might be some that run into swales or creeks, but the assessment is that that's not going to be large. Different story if you've got a 10-metre dam and a house right underneath it, or Oda Matata below Lake Benmore.
Any other questions, councillors? No, I think that's it. Thank you, Brian. Again, really good, knowledgeable submission, so thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure if Lionel has arrived. And Elspeth Buchanan was our next speaker, but that wasn't till 4:40, so we're a little bit ahead. I don't know if can we make contact? We'll adjourn for a couple of minutes to see if we can make contact with either of submitters, and we'll see where we're at. So we'll just adjourn for a few minutes, people. Thank you. just give her a few moments to get ready. Kia ora, Elspeth. How are you? We'll just give you a few moments to settle yourself in. We just had a few cancellations, so that's why we were waiting anxiously for you to come in. And we just got the word from reception that you'd just arrived, so thank you. So thank you for being here and giving up your time. You've got 10 minutes to speak, and what we'll do at 9 minutes, if you're still speaking, we'll just ring a little bell. There you go. And that'll give their signal to know that you're almost at the end. But if not, all good, and then we'll ask some questions if that's okay. Cool. Oh, and just got to push the button on one of the two things in front of you. There should be a little button there. Oh, so yeah, Ian will help you.
Okay.
There you go, cool. And now you're ready to go.
You want the light on when you're talking.
Right, okay.
Cool.
Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Right, my name's Elspeth Buchanan. I live at 1809 North Eyre Road, that's in West Ayrton in North Canterbury. I've had some experience with dam building requirements. I was involved in an opposition to Waimakariri irrigation, putting in a dam near Oxford a couple of years back. So that's my background. Now, first of all, looking at the outline that was put up, I feel that placing the primary responsibility on dam owners to identify or monitor or report on dangerous or earthquake-prone dams is frankly unrealistic. Dam owners obviously are going to be reluctant to acknowledge that their dam is defective in some way, and even more likely they simply won't have the knowledge to spot potential dangers. Even more likely they may take the view that, well, it's been standing for X number of years, there can't be much wrong with it. We had a lot of buildings in Christchurch that had been standing for X number of years, but the earthquake showed that actually there was quite a lot wrong with them, and we found out the hard way and people died. Before a dam can be certified as safe, I believe it should be a requirement to produce a report by an independent and appropriately qualified engineer who's made a thorough inspection, but who also has the power to require consultation of seismic experts and other relevant experts. An expert dam engineer isn't necessarily qualified to assess seismic risk. I've actually been in a hearing where a presumably qualified engineer came out with a glorious statement, we're not required to consider vertical acceleration. Apparently there wasn't a box to tick for vertical acceleration, and we know the hard way what sort of vertical accelerations we got both in the Christchurch and in the Kaikoura earthquakes, and you can imagine what they would do to an earth dam. So furthermore, engineers aren't necessarily qualified to assess the surrounding geology and assess things like slope stability, that sort of thing. Now, sure, this will be expensive, but of course a dam failure with the potential for loss of life, loss of stock, massive destruction of property is even more expensive in the long term. So a short-term economy could mean a very much greater expense down the track. I believe exceptions can be made for dams that are in ground, because dams that are dug into the ground are potentially very much less dangerous. Sure, they can shatter, the liner can rupture, but you're going to get local water saturation. You're not going to get a flood of water coming down. Simply notifying that a dam is potentially dangerous and putting in place monitoring and evacuation plans is frankly dangerously inadequate. Unless a dam's constructed with a provision for safely dumping the dam contents very, very quickly, I mean in a matter of hours, not in a matter of weeks or months, simply dump to a safe place, down a riverbed for example, then even the most elaborate monitoring is useless. The monitoring will tell you that you've got a problem, but if you can't do anything about the problem, there's not much point in having it. Similarly, even if a potentially flooded area can be evacuated, and this isn't always possible, there's a substantial risk that a dam failure will occur at night, or when the weather's bad, or when there's just been an earthquake or some other major event, and evacuation simply cannot be carried out efficiently. And evacuation will save the people from drowning, if you're lucky, but it's not going to save all the stock from drowning, nor is it going to avoid the property damage. And property damage can be expensive houses wiped out. It can be large businesses put out of business. There's a huge range of potential damage there. I mean, a farm where you've got no usable fences or gates left because of flood damage, and where a chunk of your topsoil has gone because of flood damage. I mean, great, you've got your farm back and you're not drowned, but you've got a massive problem on your hands. And it follows from this that I think it's essential that each dam owner is required to carry insurance so that any damage done by a dam failure can actually be adequately compensated. If insurance isn't obtained or if it lapses, the dam owner should be required to empty the dam immediately. No grace periods, no, oh, we'll give you 6 months or something. Just, you haven't got insurance, empty it now. Because the cost of a dam failure, of even a medium-sized dam, can run into many millions. And since it's unlikely that any dam, no matter how well built, is not going to fail in a major earthquake, you look at some of the predictions for what's going to happen when the main divide fault moves, we could get an 8. And I don't think it's reasonable to assume that any dam, except an in-ground dam, is not going to fail under those circumstances. So the insurance, yes, it's likely to be very expensive. But I don't think this should be a reason for putting people in the area of the dam at risk of permanent loss of property, loss of livelihood. I think that the insurance should be a requirement. Now, in paragraph 5 of the policy, listing the Council's priorities in performing the functions, certainly sets out a rational way of assessing the risks in a sensible way. But I would like to emphasise that for this to be effective, the timescale does have to be kept as short as possible. Now, I appreciate there are practical difficulties here. There aren't an unlimited number of experienced dam engineers. There aren't an unlimited number of seismic experts. So, yes, it would be necessary to prioritise, but I do feel that the timescale should be kept as short as possible. And I also think that the Council must be prepared to be ruthless, or you can use the word proactive if you prefer, in enforcing an order to empty a dam if it's dangerous. Attempts to accommodate the dam owners could well cost lives. So emptying a dam could well be inconvenient for a dam owner, but it's a reversible inconvenience. The dam is emptied. When it's safe, it's filled again. Somebody who's drowned isn't going to be coming back to life. So you do need to always look at what can happen if the worst happens. Now, I appreciate that heritage dams are placed in a special category, and I appreciate also that the Council has no power to alter this, but presumably it's the structure of the dam that's heritage, not the water in it, I hope. So I suggest it follows that emptying that dam, if it's a dangerous heritage dam, you're still going to have the heritage structure there. But to allow dangerous dams to continue to operate as dams, to me, is extremely irresponsible. If they're dangerous, they should be empty. No two ways about it. That's the end of my submissions. Thank you very much for listening. Do you have any questions?
Kia ora, Elspeth, thank you very much. Are there any questions from councillors? Yeah, Councillor Mackenzie.
Well, you make a big deal about seismic risk, but we had a significant earthquake a few years ago here. Are you aware of any dams that failed as a result of that earthquake?
There weren't very many dams to fail of that sort of size. I don't think there were very many dams of that size to fail. Yes, I am aware of some of them that failed, but I can't give you chapter and verse, I'm sorry.
Well, as I understand it, no dams failed, and there are a lot of dams. I mean, smaller and of all variety sizes, and none of them failed as a result of the earthquakes. So I just wonder really whether you're pushing for a level of oversight which is greater than the risk you're trying to identify.
I do know that North Canterbury is riddled with so-called minor faults. And I also know that it was a minor fault that caused the Christchurch earthquake, so minors are kind of relative there. A minor fault can do a lot of damage. And if you look at the seismic maps of North Canterbury, which has been extensively mapped for fault lines, I'm sure South Canterbury is equally vulnerable, but it just hasn't been mapped in the same way. You've got a lot of potential dangers there. And by all means, if a seismic expert says, no, there is no risk there, and an engineer is happy that the dam will withstand any jolt it gets, okay. But I really don't think that's terribly likely. The Kaikoura earthquake certainly caused dam failures. I know, I've seen the photographs. So, and I mean, common sense alone suggests that having a ×3 gravity acceleration underneath a packed earth dam is not going to do it any good at all.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Southworth and then Councillor Robinson online. So there you go, Vicky.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. And
you just need to and then when it's your turn to speak, you can push a button.
Yeah, we can only have it on at one end or the other, except for the boss who's got a button all the time.
Maybe just put it a bit closer to you. Yeah.
Oh, is that? There we go. We had a submission from another one of the hearings another submission that we had to this consultation from somebody who's the previous chair of the New Zealand Society on Large Dams, and in that he identifies that we perhaps need to be more explicit around what's the definition or what we're defining as the dangerous dam versus a prone dam. Dangerous dam being ones that are identified as having a higher risk. And so is that something that would go some way to sort of alleviating your concerns around, it helps prioritise and making sure that we're on to the ones that are...
Well, it would certainly help to prioritise them, yes. But I think the risk here is that classifying the dams doesn't actually get us any further forward. You have to classify them and then do something about them. I realise that's the intention, but it's very easy to get bogged down in the details of how things should be classified. And it's also, I think, easy to overlook the fact that a dam is put in to assist with irrigation. Now, that's fine. I'm not anti-storing water. That's great. There are safe ways to do it. You can do it alongside a river with an easy out, into the river. You can put the dam in ground, though that would be a smaller dam, presumably. So the purpose of this dam is to assist somebody to make more money out of their property. Now, that's great, all for making money. But that doesn't justify risking other people. Doesn't justify risking other people's livelihood or other people's property or stock or anything else. And I think that needs to be kept firmly in mind. There's nothing wrong with gaining a commercial advantage by putting in a dam. great. But not if it's going to put your neighbours at risk. And I think that needs to be firmly kept in mind. And if it's expensive to comply with insurance requirements, to comply with engineering requirements, frankly, so be it. If you want that extra storage, then either put it in safely or be prepared to get the necessary clearances and certificates.
Got it. Councillor Robinson, online, you've got a question? It's Councillor Robinson. She's online up there.
Oh, I'll put my camera on just for some wild hair day. Kia ora, thank you for your conversation, and you're spoken like a true engineer. You sound like an engineer to me.
I'm actually a metallurgist, but I am a chartered engineer, but I'm not a constructional or a dam engineer.
Yeah, well, you sound very much like that type of jargon anyway, and it's quite refreshing. So are you considering that potentially to assess the appropriateness of dams, it's more of a like a zone to zone or catchment to catchment approach based on the sort of geotechnical side, perhaps? And I guess the other part of my question is, do you consider it more appropriate that either councils or governments start looking at this as opposed to independent property owners?
I think it's going to have to be council driven. I would like to think that in a perfect world, a dam owner would front up and say, I've got this dam and I think it may be terribly dangerous and I'm going to have to do a lot about it. But, I don't believe in the tooth fairy either. Dam owners are going to be predisposed, human nature being what it is, to say, oh no, I'm sure it's safe. It was properly built in the first place and it's been there for 50 years, so I'm sure it's going to be perfectly all right. And as I say, that isn't actually necessarily the case. And I think this is going to have to be strongly council-led, because if it's not, I think it's just going to drift away and people aren't going to get round to doing things.
I've just got a second one to that, just with regards to your the heritage dam situation. So you think if it's deemed unsafe or unsafe for that use, retirement of that dam is appropriate, and sort of preserving it that way as just a structure as opposed to a using structure?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
do. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Genevieve. Is there any other questions for Elspeth today? Hey, thank you for your submission. Really knowledgeable. It's great to hear that you're Councillor Korako. Sorry, have you got a question?
Kia ora. Kia ora te mana.
Can you turn your camera on? Look, is that possible? Because it's really hard for Elspeth to understand who's speaking. Is that okay?
Oh, no, I can't.
Okay, oh, good.
I can see the icon.
No, she can. Oh, good. Way you go. Carry on.
Yeah.
Okay. Elspeth, thank you so much for a well-articulated presentation, submission. I wish you were first, actually, because, we had our first submitter, which actually wasn't as obviously articulate as you, but I take on board, the reason why we need to have this, and you've articulated, as I said, very well, because we actually have a number of so-called people that build dams, but they actually really find it difficult to go through this process, because he talked about, the cost, the engineers and why are we doing it and all of that. So mine was just an observation, but what you've done is actually really sort of articulated to us the reason for it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You actually build dams, and a lot of it is actually to make money, but actually not to the detriment or putting neighbours and other people at risk when you do that. The interesting thing, though, is that have you? I don't think that there's actually been, any kind of work done. I may be wrong, to actually look at the old dams and whether they're registered. Because what you're saying is that, there may be ones that are, and we're talking about the heritage sort of side of it as well, and there is a cost to that. So, are you aware of like the register for that?
No, I'm not. I didn't even know. In fact, until I read the council's presentation here, I didn't know there were such things as heritage dams. I have to admit, I've never got misty-eyed with nostalgia looking at a lovely dam. To me, a dam is a practical structure, and if it's not safe, take it out. But I mean, I accept that, people have different standards, and some people may be strongly attached to their friendly neighbourhood dams and they don't want to see them go. In which case, keep the structure, but lose the water until the dam's made safe.
Yeah. Sorry, just one more point, Tiamana. As one of the two Ngāi Tahu councillors actually on ECAN, Elspeth, one of the things also that we have always struggled with is actually when you put a dam in, you're actually changing a number of the, the tile or the actual nature of the landscape and all of that. It's not natural. So that's sort of kind of a kind of a indigenous sort of way of looking at it. So I've kind of struggled also with the fact about having heritage, dams and things like that. If it's not in use, well, then let's return it back if we can to what to the natural way of the of the awa of the waterway. Okay, thank you.
And the other thing, of course, is that if it's a very high dam, if it's built a long way up out of the ground, it can actually change the view for quite a large area of land. So again, you're losing some of the scenic value of the land.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And maybe the heritage is about how we built them, the architectural, the engineering in it as well. Maybe that's the value of it people see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Nook.
Thank you.
Grant, have you got a question?
Yeah, just quickly on the heritage dam.
Oh.
I was in Wellington recently and went to the Zealandia Park, and it has formed around a heritage dam where the water behind the dam was reduced to 3 metres high, but the structure was maintained, and it's a pretty spectacular large dam that, if breached, it would have sort of flooded half of Wellington. My question is, in terms of your, in terms of the work that you're involved with in the Waimakariri irrigation projects and the ponds, what lessons do you think we might have learned from that? The decisions that came out of that.
Right, thank you. Permission was given to proceed with those. It hasn't been built. Whether it will be or not is a bit moot at the moment. Probably not the right venue to go into the decision too deeply, but I will say in passing that what really concerned me was the lack of technical knowledge of the judge who heard the matter. I mean, we had technical experts advising, but I was often left with the impression that the judge wasn't really following the science behind it at all. Now, that's a problem right across the judiciary. I'm actually a patent attorney by profession, and one of the problems we have is a lack of specialist judges. So you bring a complex copyright matter before a judge and he's brilliant on finance or criminal stuff or something, but he doesn't know copyright from a hole in the ground. Now, the Environment Court judges, I would have thought, would have been more knowledgeable about the subject matter, but sadly it didn't seem to be the case. So whether this dam that Waimak Irrigation want to put in can in fact be dug safely or be built safely, I'm afraid only time will tell. They've got permission to go ahead with it. Whether they avail themselves of that permission remains to be seen.
Kia ora. Thank you, Elspeth, and thanks, councillors, for all the questions. I think that's all we have. I just wanted to give you a big thanks.
Craig.
Yes, Nook.
Sorry, just one thing. Elspeth, Nook Karakia here. Is that you? I think you're my patent lawyer.
Oh, it's conflict of
I think
interest.
a name like Elspeth is a name like Tutahonuku. It's very
Nook,
few and far between.
I am
Thank
your
you.
patent lawyer. Yeah. I'm sorry.
I actually.
I hope this doesn't create some sort of conflict of interest here.
It probably has, but
I don't think so.
oh, good.
I don't think so.
Thank you, Nook.
Thank you, Elspeth. Nice to hear your dulcet tones again. Thank you. Kia ora.
Hi, kia ora. Hey, thank you again. Really good presentation. Thank you for your knowledge
Thank you for
as well.
listening so patiently, all of you.
All good. So I think that's all of our submitters for today, and big thanks to everyone who's participated. Our next meeting for council is Wednesday the 27th of November next month. I'm going to declare the meeting closed. And who opened this morning? Grant, have you got a karakia, or would you like me to? You got it? Oh, good. Kapai.
Sure, thanks, Craig. Anuhia, ki te uru tapanui o tānei, kia watia, kia mama, tia nakau, tia tinana, ti wairua, i te ara takata, koe e ronga, whakaria aki ki runga, kia tina humiei take.
Okay. Kia ora, everybody. Have a good evening. Safe travels home, everybody.